about how sustainability brings retailers, brands, and consumers together in a new way. My panelists are coming. Great. I don't have to call them, and I will introduce them in a minute. I would like to sit here if I may. um, I will kick off. Unfortunately, it's not a secret that fashion retailers face difficulties. City centers are increasingly struggling for attractiveness and footfall. Many insolvency. There are many bad news. And now it's time to get together and actually harness forces with new ideas. And this is why we need new concepts. In this talk, we would like to discuss the approaches that are possible, store sharing, shop-in-shop solutions, city centers as experience journeys, then experience at the POS. This is important for each and every one, both for consumers and for retailers, and new dynamism between established players. And they are sitting here, and this is why I'm very much looking forward to our conversation now. Maybe you want to introduce yourselves, and then I will sit down, and then our guests have a face. And I will start with the ladies. Mrs. Happel.
Good morning. My name is Sylvia Happel, and I am chairing Business Development Europe at Lenzing AG. Lenzing AG is one of the largest cellulose fiber manufacturers, and we are famous for being very sustainable in our production. My name is Annabelle Hohmann from Lanius, and I am managing director together with my mother, who founded the label, and we focus on sustainable fashion for women since 1999. My name is Tanja Kleve-Meyer, and I am the founder and managing director of Like a Bird, a sustainable fashion, and I am located in Herford.
Well, thanks for inviting me. My name is Markus Schütte. I am the responsible for the Econ Sustainability Platform, and we're located in Bielefeld, and we've been around for many years already. I just said how sustainability brings together retailers, brands, and consumers in a new way. We have to get together, get our act together, come up with new concepts, store sharing, for instance. And I would like to ask you, Mrs. Kleve-Meyer, you you're very passionate about lively city centers. Something has to change there. You actually develop sustainable store sharing concepts. And what do you think? How can sustainability instill inner cities with fresh life?
I think it's very important to show sustainability to the people, to make it experienceable, and that you can also focus on innovation. I think there are different materials, and we have to inform the consumers about the different materials in order to tell them about the topic. For example, we are not only focusing on sustainable fashion, but we also included interior and arts. And this means that we can really give a new face to the entire store. And we also saw that, and this was quite interesting, we now attract people also from outside of Herford. We opened our store in April, and now we get people that are living more than 50 kilometers away from Herford. They are now in our database. They are coming back over and over again based on our mailing activities. Last December, we focused on demand, and I think it's important to really give a good topic to the customer, to show them, to give them experience, and to do something beyond just selling.
Experience through variety, diversity?
Yes, through variety, diversity, and also to get away from fashion only, to also use other areas. Because with everything that we do around, we still sell most of the fashion products, but we still want to look beyond the fashion area only, and we would like to create an area where people like to spend time and do not only see fashion but something else as well. So we did an arts exhibition, or now the on-demand production where we show new topics to the customers, have a lot of activities around the topic in different contexts. And this means that the inner city areas can attract customers even beyond their own environment.
Do you have informed shoppers with you, or do you also bring in uninformed shoppers? Those who are informed like it, but to really instead with Fresh Life, you have to have those who want to get this new experience.
Absolutely. It's very interesting and very exciting because people are very curious. If the people walk into the shop, then I tell them we are a sustainable concept store, and they say, yes, we read about it and this is why we're here. So it's both. So we get both types of customers, and this is how we managed to also attract people who did not know so much about sustainability, but now they like shopping with us because they know how much better sustainable fashion is.
Mr. Schutte, that fits well. You are at EK Fashion, and you are actually responsible for the green changing areas because it's also about information. Yeah, that's true. Perfect fit here because when 2 years ago we started with this idea of making sustainability experienceable at the POS, we found that there was a lot missing. When we started out, there were three questions: how do entrepreneurs and enterprises become sustainable? How can sustainability become an experience at the POS? And if you don't want to deal with sustainability in the conventional market, how can I then actually leverage for generating sales? And this is how our e-car platform came into life. I have brought a chart to show what we really do. This is chart number 1. Here you can see it. The idea of the e-car fashion sustainability platform rests on 5 pillars. We buy a big portfolio from truly sustainable brands. Mr. Gantner already mentioned this. He has a ratio of 5 to 7% in his range. This is what Mr. Gunter said. And in that case, it is important to make it visible. And we had the idea of the green change area. So with retailers, the retailers can actually make sustainable brands experienceable at the POS with easy means. And with our referral marketing, we also make sure that Mrs. Roman of Daniel or Tanja Klever-Meyer can actually integrate these brands in their environment. And what's important, we're a multi-sector group through Tanja Klever-Meyer. She said, I also include furniture and other lifestyle articles. And we, as a big group, because sustainability actually affects all areas of lifestyle, offer retailers solutions to make sustainability experienceable at the POS. And the last point is training. We have developed a fashion academy because we believe, and this is what Thomas Ganter said before as well, without education, without uniform standards on the market, sustainability will not work because standard retailers don't deal with green topics too little. Green has always been around, not only since COVID. Otherwise, Neonet wouldn't be in existence. Our task as a group is to build a stage here. You mentioned 2 points that I would like to pick up on. Of course, there will be more information at 12:20. Mrs. Klever-Meyer will actually present a workshop for all parties interested. And she will talk about information on sustainability. This is exactly the question. This is my question for you, Mrs. Hormann, because you've been doing it for quite a while. Your mother established the company, and the brand is quite well known. But can you see how the purchasing behavior changed? There are more and more young people who, honestly speaking, are so passionate about fast fashion. This is how they grew up. And there's a big mass of people saying, well, I deliberately opt for something else and I want to dress sustainably, I want to live sustainably.
Yes, for a very long time we were only a niche player, and for many, many years we were not very prominent. But now, since the beginning of the COVID crisis, since the beginning of 2020, we could see a change, and suddenly there was a peak in the demand for sustainable products. Perhaps you think about it in more detail. Well, the search requests at Google for sustainable fashion since 2020 increased enormously. It was twice as high as in the 3 years before that. So twice as many people try to find information on sustainable fashion. This is the first step. So people know, yes, there is a problem in the fashion industry, and now they would like to know how can we have more sustainable fashion. We already had this trend in the food sector, and this is a trend that unfortunately is going down now since the beginning of 2022. So we see a decreasing demand for fashion, for sustainable fashion. The interest is decreasing. Topics such as safety are more in the focus, and this is something that was normal for my generation. I grew up in the feeling that Germany is a safe country, we can plan for the future, but this is now shaky again. And both the consumers and the manufacturers, the producers, focus more on themselves again. There are fears now that have developed since the beginning of January 2022. And we now feel that our customers are more careful about prices, about spending. They mainly buy during the sales. And when we have the strongest fashion month, normally people buy more, and now people only buy one product. So the customers are taking very conscious decisions what they need and what they want. Now things are easing off again. In the sale, people do buy, but people watch more about prices.
How do you counteract this?
Well, definitely. Well, how can I put it? We cannot catch up for what we missed out in sales in autumn. This is not a big disaster for us now because our fashion is not only for one season. Some of the items will be sold in our own outlet in Cologne, but the other products we will just take new photographs and we will give them a new facelift in next autumn. This is not too bad because our collections build on each other and can be combined with each other. And we also tried this out with retailers. For the retailers, this concept is new. They normally say we have to get rid of all the products and then we have new fashion for the next season. And we say sustainable approach is important in these storages as well. And this is a major topic. And bigger retailers, of course, first of all, have to learn this. They have to learn that linen pants can also be sold next season. A white linen pants is also usable next season.
This is so exciting, but I'll get back to you in a minute. It's so exciting because you said it is easier for us, but this is happening the way it is. Isn't this probably the solution? Combining various labels on one area to inform people so that you avoid being this lone wolf? Or couldn't I actually combine it with in the way of a store sharing? Is this probably an approach? Yeah, maybe we could have the second chart. What is important is, of course, the partners of sustainability platform, the visibility in retail. Over the past few years, there was hardly any visibility, and we think that with the green change area, our development, it becomes more feasible for retailers to actually present sustainable goods within their own environment. And the demand, I agree with you, in 22 actually went down in absolute figures, but it's not gone. There is too little sustainability at the POS overall, and there's also a lack of courage allowing change, restructuring of assortments, because shoppers are still the shoppers are still there. They want these offers, but they simply don't find it at times because some brands are simply unknown. And our task as a group is to make it clear to our retailers in this segment there's a bandwidth of very exciting labels at various price points. And if you want to kick off with our green change areas, then you could actually present sustainability in an enticing way. Tanya is doing this at her store. And if you really make it perfectly clear and combine it with some storytelling, then I do think that sustainability is an absolute USP. But to make it, you have to make it visible. Yes, visibility is a very good buzzword. We've talked about it for 1.5 days. Transparency, more information, exposure in general. I think this is not a secret. People are insecure. This is what Mr. Gunter said before. What certificate counts for what? The certification, even the purchasing guys don't know what they should buy. There's so many big question marks. And you are with Lenzing, and Tencel is one of your products, highly innovative. And does it also need to be explained to end users, and how do you go about it?
Yes, it's very important for us because the demand for more sustainable materials definitely comes from the brands, from the labels, but also from the consumers. Just like you said, Mr. Hohmann, the interest in high-value sustainable materials increased a lot during the COVID time, and we also got a lot of new requests via our website, and we invested a lot into our social media presence in recent years. We are also cooperating with influencers, explaining to the end consumer what the differences between different fibers are and why our fibers are more sustainable. And this is very important for us because most of the shoppers and end consumers do not really know about the differences of different fibers. They don't know the difference between viscose, modal, and they don't even know Tencel, for example. So it is necessary to explain it in a way that is easy to understand but still very clear. And we also sometimes found that some of the brands are trying to explain this. They got the information, but then they are only adding to the confusion because they did not tell the entire story, or it sounded as if the statements on the fibers were relevant for the entire product. But here you have to be very clear, you have to be very precise, and sometimes you also have to ask back with the producer of the material.
But this means that visibility and transparency is needed for both sides, both on the person side who needs explanation and the other who explains. This is an issue in itself. The producer knows what he's doing, but the next step is then to actually bring it home to end users with simple explanations. And I think that this is the problem. There is the Fashion Revolutions campaign. Can you already do this consciously at the point of sale? Who's doing my apparel?
We would love such a situation, and this is wishful thinking here. This is really an exception because, as we already heard and discussed before, most of the producers are not in a position that they can really communicate it in a very transparent and authentic manner. So we still need to do a lot of work at the POS, but we are starting and we have to start somewhere.
They're wonderful pioneers and they're wonderful brands saying that yes, I interrupted you.
Yes, this is a bubble that I was talking about. Yes, there are concept stores, sustainable concept stores, or what you can see here. These are pioneers. This is really a role model, but the normal conventional retailer is still overtaxed with all these approaches. Perhaps it's possible to do this in small structures where the owners get information on in showrooms and on shows, but to really get the message across even down to the smallest apprentice, this is really taking a long time. It's a long path. Perhaps I can also come in here. From our perspective, Lanius can best be sold in the family-owned retail business, where the story is told, where people really tell the story to the consumer. And there is a specific reason for this, because we've got a story, something can be told, and this happens best if somebody in the retail trade is really interested and knows about the story, and if they buy the products, they can best transport it to the customer. And this is how Lanius works, and I think this is still true for many of the sustainable brands. It's very difficult on large-scale anonymous areas. There you have to do a lot because the sales assistants are probably not informed enough. We do provide a lot of training, but we can't reach everybody. Then the shop assistants are changing too often.
This is really exciting, but I would like to ask you, Mrs. Hubbell, because you have a fiber background, you are a producer, and you have looked at the choice of materials. And if you then say, I have to transport it and I can do it better in my own place, where I can create feelings, where I can explain better, where you probably understand my concept. What about somebody who has the fiber? It's good, I can recommend it, and then it wraps up in the product and you lose sight of it. How closely do you cooperate with the producer of the fabric or of the apparel?
This is really a huge problem. Smaller sustainable brands such as Lanius, there it can work perfectly because they know the entire supply chain, they know who is producing the fabrics, the garments, and they are also in contact with the fiber manufacturer. But especially for the medium-sized and big brands, they only buy garments. Only. Well, they do buy their garments, but they do not know who produced the fabric. They do not know who was spinning the product, who produced the yarn. So the contact is no longer there. Sometimes they do have some contact to us and they have some knowledge on the fibers, but all the other production steps are also very important, especially when the fabric is produced. You need a lot of energy and dye stuff, chemicals that also have an influence on the environment. And here they don't know anything. There's no transparency.
But do you help your customers, your buyers? Can they get a certificate from you? How does the cooperation work?
Of course, we do have our own fabric certificates, so the fabric producers can have their fabric certified. In the first step, we of course check whether our fibers are included, but then also quality standards, pilling, shrinkage, tear resistance, and also the garment manufacturers can ask for product licenses, getting a fabric certification number, and this gives a certain degree of transparency. And we have to then talk to the entire supply chain. And this, of course, against the backgrounds will create a certain degree of transparency. But we also do a lot of counseling. If the brands come to us and say, we would like to now change from viscose to lens, but our manufacturer does not have the material, then we give advice and we will tell them about the spinning factories so that the companies can get our yarns, or we also recommend other fabric producers. And this works very well. It is, of course, a lot of work. It takes time if you really want to switch your collection to more sustainable materials, but this close contact and the 360-degree counseling right from the start until the ready-made product and the including communication works very well.
So buyers can actually get support from you. We don't have a headset. We can only hear ourselves with the natural voice. We can hardly hear ourselves, so don't be surprised that I'm asking you. So customers, buyers can closely cooperate with you and get support, and you can even help with communication.
Yes, this is very important because sometimes you do have misunderstandings and perhaps it's not absolutely clear what we are saying on our website. And this means that we first offer some text snippets that the customers can use, but they can, of course, also think about their own claims and we will check whether this is really correct. And we, of course, want to make sure that what we say about the fiber is only relating to the fiber. It's not relating to the fabric or the finishing or the entire garment. So here we are, of course, helpful.
Mrs. Hohmann, transparency and communication. You said, okay, our label is known and we can actually explain in our own store. But how important is transparency for shoppers? Is this the younger shoppers, the younger generation, or the older generation? Who's interested? This is a question that goes to both of you. Who actually wants to know about sustainability? Who are the ones saying, I want to know more about the product? So you can answer this question.
I cannot really give you an age group here. You can find it both among the older generation and the very young generation. So it is really all the age groups basically. And we also sell our products to shoppers starting 35 years upwards, and everybody seems to be interested in sustainability. Of course, first of all, it's about fashion, and this means fashion has to be beautiful, has to be liked. And what you can feel immediately is that we've got a natural material, and then the customers want to know, what does it mean? It feels great, and then we start talking about it, and then it develops. I will support this 100%, and in the store I also know that it's all the generations. We have also lanyards in our product range and also streetwear, and sometimes mothers and daughters come together and the daughters explain to their mothers what sustainability is. And you really feel that this is important for the younger generation, that the people at the age of 20, for example, are very much informed. They know a lot about it. But nevertheless, for our products, we also see women of a higher age. They come in and get inspiration and they take a deliberate decision for sustainable products. So very often I have a discussion with the daughters of the mothers coming to my store, and then the daughters tell their mothers, I told you about it, didn't I?
Well, this is a good development. You already work together. This is interesting because you have your shop-in-shop area, and here you want to feature several labels on one area. Why do you think that these areas then should be highlighted? Why not integrated in the range? Maybe we can have chart number 3 on this question. But before I answer this question, Mrs. Greuner, I would like to go one step back. Training. Owner-managed stores, no problem. I'm confronted with the merchandise because I organize myself with the manufacturer. So the expert knowledge is immediately transferred to my end users. We have a fashion academy. We assume that conventional retailers have not had the time to look at sustainability because they were at home in a different world. And green is the new normal as we understand it. And this is why we have to convey basic knowledge on sustainability and start, as the previous speaker said, it starts with the seals and the symbols, which are trustworthy. What's a KBA or KBT? What is a lancing fiber? What is the difference? And this is the technical knowledge that is so important for POS staff, for storytelling. This is also setting these stores apart from the boring other retail areas. So sustainability does stand a chance at the POS. The photo I brought along, this is one green change area that we installed at one of our retail partners in 2022. And there we not only actually provide the right displays without plastics and metal, and this is also complemented by training, supplier training and staff training. And highlighting it is important for a huge area of 5,000 square meters, because it helps consumers to understand, there do I find it. Here I can actually look at a number of labels with a certain degree of fashion and lifestyle. And there the retailer can actually help shoppers who couldn't find sustainable fashion before. We think that this all-in-one package is one answer to show sustainability in a different way at the POS. What does it take, to your mind, to make such concepts scalable? That's really a good question. I think it has to do with fashion and courage. I have to change my ranges because sustainability won't go away. And it also requires a certain overview that we can provide as a group by actually offering our retailers or recommending it to our retailers the highest number of sustainable brands. And then the exchange here at the trade fair, the trade show, where you can see the labels. But fun is important. Retailers must want this change. You just put it very nicely. Green is the new normal. It would be wonderful. It is desirable, but it's not so realistic yet, honestly speaking. You're still struggling when you have a product that is all sustainable, and nevertheless, you have to be modern. So new solutions are called for. You have a wonderful web shop, web shops in general. Is this easy? Isn't it a lot harder because these products need so much more explanation? Can you actually reach out to people with such a web shop, or is it just an add-on?
No, especially in a web shop, you can tell your story. You are free to tell your story. You can show the certificates in a way that they can be linked with a product immediately, and this is something that is not possible in marketplaces, which is a pity. But in the online shop, I can explain the certificate, I can explain or show the production facilities. If I was to do this at the POS, it would be too difficult. I would have to write a whole book on the products. But in the future, we can also work more with QR codes. This is something that we are used to right now. And then you can also show the story behind, which can be called with a smartphone. This would be an idea, but in your own web shop, it's the easiest way to really show the story behind your product.
How do you go about information? Do you only use well-trained staff, or are there add-ons at the products?
Definitely, there. Well, we only have sustainable products in our product range, and this means that we also have the necessary information material on the individual products. But then I have to confirm what Mrs. Hohmann just said. This is something that you can best do online, but it's also important that you create a link to the point of sale, to the brick and mortar shop, and you can do this based on QR codes or also some information material that you have in the store, which is always taken by the customers, but, and this was mentioned before, also with very competent and knowledgeable shop assistants. Otherwise it's not possible. This is really the crucial point at the end of the day, because if you really have the consumer on site, and if you then can really show your competence and tell the stories, then it's something that makes the consumer open up. But this is more than just fashion. If the fashion looks good, it's easier. But then for t-shirts, for example, you've got 20 or 30 brands, and if you then want to have the customer buy a sustainable t-shirt which is 10 euros more expensive, then this needs to be explained, and this is difficult to transport online. If you compare the different values, this is something that you can better convey personally, and because otherwise you have to make sure that the consumers also read this. So if there is a shop assistant really telling the story, you can reach a lot, and I experienced it myself.
So you either have the shoppers who really want to know about it. This would be the ideal case, but unfortunately, many shoppers haven't reached this stage. I don't think that there's a lack of interest. But as you said, green is the new normal. It is a desire to be informed, but there is too little knowledge around, and this is why we need so much information. Green is the new normal. I like it so much. So, what are the next steps that you would like to see to conclude this round to make green the new normal? Because it's not yet.
Well, for me, my big wish is cooperation, better cooperation between the entire stakeholders in the textile chain. And this means that we also have to talk to the brands, to the labels. We can give them advice. We can make material available. For example, these little boxes, which you can also show at the point of sale, and they also exist in a larger format. So please approach us so that we can help you. This is my biggest wish. Okay, well, I think in order for green to become the new normal, as was already mentioned by L&T earlier on, it's important for the owners to get active. It's always down to the people. It's down to the interest, the necessity, the awareness of the topic. There are so many things coming together, but at the end of the day, somebody has to say, this needs to be done now, and then it's possible. And this is shown by many brands. It is possible to produce sustainably, to offer sustainable products. It's not impossible. It is proven by many brands already. And in order for this to happen, it's of course also important to get the demand from the retail side, so that things are also changing among the retailers. And I think the peak was 2020, the beginning of 2020, where so many conventional retailers approached us and asked us for the first time about sustainable products. They asked us, why are your products sustainable? What is sustainability in fashion? But now we still have to learn a lot, to do a lot, but it's up to everybody, every entrepreneur to really change what they have been doing in the past in a sustainable manner. I think cooperation is really the big solution. And perhaps it sounds boring now after the COVID crisis, but we have to see a crisis as an opportunity. Mrs. Hohmann said that it's going down now. In the past, I would have said sustainability is driving your revenues, but this is no longer the case nowadays, where people are more careful about their money and about spending. But in cooperation, by growing together, you can still do a lot by organizing events, by making the consumer aware of what is happening around us. And the crisis also makes people consume in a more conscious way, and this means that you can also get some positive news.
Thank you.
Nachhaltig ist.
Well, I thank you that corporations are really important, but retailers are called for because they're the interface between supply and demand. And retailers, the food industry has demonstrated this. Retailers have to localize demand and then adapt the supply. Although we currently experience a tremendous wave, and there is a conscience, a consumer conscience, to consume less and to rethink consumption. And there should be sustainable offer or supply for a demand that exists, because sustainability must not necessarily be expensive. 20 years ago, sustainability was simply limited in terms of the offers. When you look at the neo-nut today and how broad the ranges are, how high fashion the ranges are, and the value for money offered for 10 or 15 years ago, this was impossible to imagine in our industry. And when I now curate my assortment in such a way that I have entry price points and more expensive garments, then green will become normal at the POS. I just have to make the offer available, the ranges, and retailers could do more in cooperation with industry to have the right information with a wonderful degree of fashion, like Mrs. Lanius has been doing it for ages with great brands such as Like a Bird. I think today in 23 we're on the right track after all of the frustration and the crisis, and this is why I'm confident that green will be normal. This was a perfect concluding remark. Thanks very much. Very exciting, this approach. Cooperation, getting our act together, and there must be somebody who decides it.